こんにちは。今日のコンタクトは上智大学4年の田中恵子がお伝えします。社会にあるさまざまな問題を歌の中に織り交ぜてメッセージを伝えるアメリカ人のシンガーデイビッド・ロビックスさんがこの夏日本に来日して東京、広島、長崎といった場所をツアーされました。今日はそのデイビッド・ロビックスさんをゲストにお迎えしています。デイビッドさん、よろしくお願いします。
こんにちは。
OurPlanet-TV にようこそお越しくださいました。デイビッドさんは、社会にあるたくさんのさまざまな問題を、歌の中に入れて、それをメッセージとして伝えている、そういったちょっと普通の歌手とはちょっと変わった活動をされているというふうにお伺いしてるんですけれども、今回アジアに来るとは初めてということなんですが、なぜこの度日本に、そして広島や長崎に訪れようと思ったんですか？
Well, it's I guess yeah, it was the conference on atomic and hydrogen bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki that was the sort of one of the main reasons that I came. It was to sing at that and to be at the conference, and then putting out an email to I think all 5 people that I knew in Japan. It ended up turning into a pretty good little tour in different places, Ube and Tokyo and Kyoto and different places, including of course Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
ということで、長崎で行われた原水爆禁止世界大会で、コンサートをされたということなんですが、その映像をご覧いただきましょ
う。ノーマー長崎、ノーマー広島、ノーマー被爆者。2007年8月9日、原水爆禁止2007年世界大会長崎。
There's no way the world can have peace until the American Empire is no longer existing.
アメリカが帝国主義をやめるまで平和はこの世界に訪れないでしょう。
Now they're just shadows
今はただの
in the street.
通りの影となってしまった。
It's such a quick burst of incredible heat.
激しい爆風と灼熱の中で。そして今、それを繰り返そうという声がある。どうしてそんなひどいことができるのか。
会場で歌われてみて、皆さんの反応というのはどうでしたか？
It was really a wonderful reaction. I mean, well, I guess just whenever you're doing a sad song, basically, to you know, you're listening for people sniffling, and there were plenty of sniffles. Yeah. So, and yeah, it was a wonderful experience. I mean, it's maybe a strange thing to say when you're singing about something that's so depressing, but yeah, it's always a good experience when a song actually has the impact that you hope it'll have, and it certainly did.
実際に、今回広島や長崎を訪れるのは初めてだったっていうことなんですけれども、それよりも以前に原水爆であるとか、原爆について歌われているんですよね。なぜ広島または被爆者っていうことについて歌を作られているんですか？
It's I mean, I think basically I've had I guess a long view of U.S. history for a while now, and you know, it's I think it's a bit confusing for some people who maybe just got radicalized a few years ago. You know, there's certain events that happen that radicalizes people, and some people thought that, oh, the world was much better before September 11th, and then that happened and everything changed. And other people think, well, everything was different, and then Kennedy was killed and everything changed. And you know, but these people are often well-meaning people, but they don't understand reality. And reality is that the United States is an empire, and it's been an empire ever since the revolution. And this is easily documented, and it's easily proven. It's just that, of course, those of us in the U.S. aren't told this. So when you understand the context in what the U.S. is about, you understand that every war that the U.S. has ever been in, without exception, has been a war for empire. And World War II was a war for empire as well. And the United States has been using weapons of mass destruction since they were invented. I mean, as soon as biological warfare was invented, it was using them against Native Americans. As soon as poison gas was it was invented, the US was using poison gas in Europe. And then, of course, as soon as they invented nuclear weapons, they used them in Japan and then elsewhere. But of course, the only time they dropped them on cities was in Japan. You know, and I think I've known for a long time, you know, something about the horror of what happened here, but and I guess it was a few years ago listening on the radio, I think on Democracy Now! Actually, to a speech of Harry Truman, and he was talking about Hiroshima being a military target, and I was thinking, gosh, how can anybody be talking about an entire city as a military target? And it was one of the many times I tried to think about the magnitude of this event and tried to imagine the horror of it. And so I've been interested in coming to Japan for a long time, and specifically in going to Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
実際に会場でその歴史のある場所で歌ってみてどのようにお感じになりましたか？
It was visiting Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I've also had friends who have visited and said the same thing, but it's somehow nothing like just even meeting Hibakusha in the United States or reading about it. There's something about being there that it reminded me so much of being visiting concentration camps in Germany and elsewhere in Europe, where the Nazis killed so many people. It has the same kind of feeling of just all these people killed for no reason in such incredible numbers, and I think the real important. The only important distinction between the genocide in Europe and the genocide in Japan is that it happened in a matter of seconds here, and in Europe it took a few years to kill millions of people. And I think you know, it's also such a powerful thing to experience, because in the U.S. and probably in almost the entire world, you know, everybody knows about the Holocaust in Europe, and everybody knows that it was wrong and it was terrible and there was no need for it and it was just killing millions of innocent people. Whereas with this Holocaust in Japan, it's not even called a Holocaust in the United States, and I think in Japan it's often not referred to that way either. And even in Japan Times just today, I was reading about something where they were saying the bombs were dropped to end the war, and they repeat this lie in the media here, and they certainly repeat this lie in the media in the United States, and I think much of the world understands more than Americans do the extent of the horror and how wrong it was morally and how pointless it was in terms of military strategy. But it's but Americans don't. Most of them don't get it, and because of course they're not told about it, and most people don't look past what they're told. They don't look into it. You know, if they look into it, of course, there's 150 movies made in Japan about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's not hard to find out, you know, about what really happened and what the real reasons were. But, you know, people don't look. But yeah, being there, it's an incredibly moving experience, and I really didn't expect it to be quite such a moving experience. There's something about looking at that dome, and one of the only 3 buildings that were partially left standing in Hiroshima. And I don't know why it's quite so powerful, because actually with almost the entire city, really everything other than 3 buildings, being totally in rubble, I thought, before I got there, I thought, how can rubble be memorialized? How can the death of so many people be represented in any way? Because it's just, how can nothingness be represented by something, you know? And in a way it seems strange that one of the few buildings actually standing can be so powerful, because actually it's not representative of what happened. I mean, it's still standing. The rest of the city wasn't. But somehow, when you see those steel beams and you see that this was a, you know, real state-of-the-art reinforced concrete steel structure that was almost totally destroyed, there's something about that that's really powerful, even more powerful than the museum, which also is pretty good. You know, although actually I think the one in Nagasaki is better.
デイビッドさんは広島や原爆っていうことだけではなくって、歌の中ではハリケーンカトリーナであったりとか、はたまたアメリカの昔の戦争であったりとか、グローバリゼーションに関してであったりとか、すごくいろいろなトピックを歌ってるような印象を受けたんですけれども、なぜそういった異なった問題や議題を取り上げて歌の中で歌われているんでしょうか。
Yeah, it's always strange to me that there are people that focus on one thing or another. I mean, of course you can't do everything, and everybody has to pick what they're doing in life, whether they're doing, you know, media or music or organizing or teaching or you know, whatever they're doing. If you know, if they care about politics and they want to make a difference, for example, there's so many different ways to do that. But I think for me it's been clear for a long time, and certainly for a lot of other people, that all these things are related. And I think it's so important to explain how they're related. And so that's what I try to do in my music. U.S. policy, and I focus on the U.S. because it's the biggest empire in the world today, and the biggest empire the world has ever known, and the most destructive one as well. And plus, I'm from there, so I feel like this is the country I can talk about with the most knowledge, and I think it's the country that most needs to change. And U.S. economic policy and U.S. military policy, U.S. domestic policy and U.S. international policy are all being conducted for the same reasons. You know, the reason why the U.S. let all those people die in New Orleans and didn't fix the bridges and didn't fix the levees is the same reason why the United States is conducting a war in Iraq, and it has to do with only caring about the wealthy in the U.S. Basically, the U.S. government does what it does because it's concerned about the rich and not concerned about other people, whether they're inside the U.S. or anywhere else in the world.
なんかお聞きしているとすごく、歴史のことをいろいろ見ながら、それでテーマを選んで歌われているような印象を受けるんですけれども、逆にそういったことをテーマにしたり、そういう活動をされることでやりにくさっていうか風当たりっていうものを感じたりすることってあるんでしょうか。
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, to some extent, it's the way the music industry works, not just for political musicians, but if you're basically the way the music industry works is you can have a few dozen musicians that are selling millions of records a year, and nobody else matters. And the way it used to work even 30 or 40 years ago was there was this middle tier of musicians, people who could just sell, you know, tens of thousands of records or something, and make a living and go and tour and this kind of thing. That whole middle tier is being eliminated, and so it's just the superstars and nobody else matters. That's the way it works, which is the way the corporate world works generally, whether it's music or any other product. I mean, it's all products is the way they look at it.
でもそういう圧力というかやりにくさの中でもずっとこういう形で歌い続けようっていう原動力はどこから来るんでしょうか。
Well, I mean, for me, and I think for a lot of other people who are sort of active in trying to change things or trying to educate people or trying to inspire people to do something, it's more about like if we didn't do this, we'd be miserable because you know, the situation, you know, when your eyes are open and you see the situation as it is, which I think a lot of people do, and music is fun in itself, and it's a good thing. And writing songs and writing essays and this sort of thing is really fun, even if you're writing about really depressing things. And you know, and if it depresses me too, that's okay as well. And being sad is okay, because the world is a complicated place, and experiencing the whole emotional range on a regular basis is a really good thing. I'd much prefer that to being a sort of robot.
ということで、これからもいろんなメッセージを伝えていってほしいなと思います。今日はデイビッド・ロビックさんをお迎えしました。デイビッドさん、ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
今日のコンタクトはデイビッド・ロビックさんをゲストにお迎えしました。
10,000 children played in the playground, swinging on the swings. Didn't hear the sound of the single plane that flew overhead. The third shift workers were just going to bed. There was a flash of light and a rumbling noise, gone in an instant. Parents, girls and boys, 10,000 mothers were boiling rice. 1,000 prisoners of war were rolling their dice, hoping they'd survive this terrible storm. When each young man in his uniform vanished in the air in the blink of an eye. One moment they lived, in the next they all died. Nagasaki, Nagasaki. 10,000 chickens were sitting on eggs, beaks in their wings, resting their legs. 10,000 farmers were looking at their fields, planning the harvest, guessing at yields, dreaming of life after the war. The next second they were living no more. Nagasaki, Nagasaki. 200,000 people were living their lives. Grandparents, children, fathers and wives. Now they're just shadows on the street in such a quick burst of incredible heat. Now listen to them talk about doing it again. From whence came the souls of these terrible men? Nagasaki, 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 Nagasaki.